Hi, everybody, and welcome to Endless Celts STATSDROP episode 3. I hope you're all well who's listening and watching along on Catch Up as well. How are you, Tony? You're on mute, big chief. Technical difficulties all before we start. It's good to see Monty in with the support of the STATSDROP right away. Fuck's sake, man, you love it, Monty. Frank Kennedy, and again, Frank Kennedy, even the boys and girls, good to have you along. Can you hear me, Tony? Oh, he's dropped away from the stream, but he will come back into it. So basically what this show was all about was just looking at primarily on the RB Leipzig game and Celtic game, the home one where we lost 2-0, and the Hibs game as well, just to see where we're coming across in that type of sense. But Tony, you're back. How are you, man?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Don't know what happened there. I never pressed mute, and I'll speak to you before. And it's just gremlins. I don't know what's happened there.
I think that was probably Monty. Monty's been in early trying to get us to stop talking about stats, you know what I mean? Type of fella that fella is, you know what I mean? Yeah, but here, what we'll do, I know like the games we're going to be speaking about primarily were a couple of weeks back, but again, there's a process to this. It's kind of leading on to the stats and improvement and that type of thing from Celtic Football Club. But we'll kind of start with the Celtic home game against RB Leipzig. The game, probably, Tony, that we had the win, or at least get something from to keep our Champions League hopes alive, and even latter stages, even in the Europa League too, that looks very unlikely. But just as I usually do, when I do my brief kind of analysis of my stats, which you get off generic websites, I'll just go with it here. Celtic had 16 shots to RB Leipzig's 13. We had 2 on target to their 5. 41% possession for us, 59 for them, 424 passes for Celtic, and 617 for RB Leipzig. And as you can tell, they won the game 2-0. Now, before we even get into the stats, Tony, that game itself, a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I mean, it's sort of, well, now it looks like it was a must-win. But going into the game, it wasn't a must-win because you were thinking, well, we just beat Shakhtar and we'll get third place. It was obviously the Real Madrid result that threw us. Because if Real Madrid beat Shakhtar, then you're thinking you just need to beat Shakhtar on Tuesday and we'll get third place. But the Real Madrid result, dropping points, and Shakhtar picking up there, that was the bit that really done us. That was the other game. So, yeah, me and my daughter were at the game, and yeah, you were hopeful again, but like a little bit different to the other 3 games, and we'll come into that a little bit, but similar to the other 3 games in the fact that we performed well, but we didn't get the outcome that we probably thought we could have deserved. So you talked about the stats there for shots and things like that, and then the sort of main one that looks at performance, the XG, it was 2 for Celtic, 1.69 for Leipzig. So
are you saying it was 2 XD for Celtic and 1.69 for them?
Yeah.
See, that's baffling. Like, you look at the Shakhtar game away, and we all kind of spoke about it, came away from it saying that was possibly the game where we kind of not scuppered our chances, but it was a game we could have took full advantage of and get the 3 points. And then, as you said, that coupled with the fact that we go into this home game full of confidence that we get a result and that type of thing, and then Shakhtar get a result against Real Madrid, which probably no one expected. But let's kind of look at the attacking sense of things. And if we look at the lineup, our attacking players were Abada, Haksabanovic, Maeda, and Kyogo. So they started the game in terms of the lineup. Is there any stats for them at the moment in European football that can kind of even put an improvement side of things on it, like a different kind of scale that they got?
Yeah. Well, so first I'll just talk about, for me, when you're in Europe, we've got different types of wingers. We've got Abada, who will score goals for us, get into good positions, but not necessarily got the ability to dribble and take players on. Similarly, Maeda's not necessarily got that skill, but he's got the energy and he can maybe get into positions. Where you've got your Haksabanovic, your Jotas, maybe Forrest to a lesser extent that will be dribblers. And it's how we mix them. So I think for Europe, you probably go by a maximum of 1. We went with 2 at Shakhtar. We had Jota and Haksabanovic, and I was a bit surprised. So for Europe, I'd probably say a maximum of 1. But for the league, I'd probably go a minimum of 1. You could probably go with both for the league, but you need a minimum of 1. But it was interesting, the two wingers we had that night were Abada and Maeda. So you've not even get your minimum of 1 there in Europe. And if you look at the 3 games that Abada and Maeda have played as the two wingers from the start, one was Ross County, which we won in the Cup. So we won that game in the Cup. The other was St Mirren. We'll not talk about that anymore. I'm not even wearing my grey shirt. And then this was the other one. So Abada and Maeda as the two wingers is probably not an ideal pairing. Just for that creativity, you know what I mean?
See as well, I mean, Monty comes in again with a comment. What was the XG of that, Nicholas? But you look at it, and we talked about the attacking side of things with Celtic, and I mean the clinical aspect now is probably.
Monty, I can give him the expected penalty for Celtic, and it was 0.
But you look at it as well. Interesting, by the way, about 3 penalties in 2 years or something. That's madness. But you look at it from an attacking sense in European football. And as I said, the whole clinical argument's probably out the window because we've scored like 14 goals the last 3 games. So we've kind of come back into form that way in terms of scoring goals and taking opportunities. But see, in European football, what for you? I mean, stats can probably show, XG and expected assist and that type of thing. But what's the issue for taking chances at this level? Is it just is it quality or?
Well, if you look at the stats. So the stats, if you look at post-shot XG versus XG, so for the Madrid game, we were at 91%, 53% for the Shakhtar game, 113% for Leipzig away, so that was okay with sort of 13% over, and 11% for the home game. So post-shot XG was 11% of the XG, so our post-shot XG was only 0.22. So post-shot XG and XG, and comparing them and even just looking at them individually on a game-by-game basis is not ideal because it's just a small sample and it's meant to be done over a long time. But you can only go with what you've got. But that would tell you that a finishing in Europe is obviously an issue because we're getting XG, we're creating chances, we're dominating the games at times, but we're not finishing. And my only conclusion for that is that when you're getting chances against your Hibs, even against Rangers, you've got confidence there. You've done it before. You've got confidence, and you're going to put that ball away. You've got confidence. You've also not got any fear that if you miss, that because you'll get another chance. So when you're getting a chance, there's no fear. There's confidence, and you're putting it away. When you're in Europe, it's a different game. It's like, will I get another chance? There's a bit of fear there. You've not scored at the Champions League level, so you've not got the confidence. So that's the only thing I can think that it's the finishing is just needing a bit of luck to get that confidence, take away the fear. And if you just look at it, the post-shot XG, I mean, we've created an XG of 2, but the post-shot XG is 0.22. So it's the finishing that's basically let us down. That's the story of the game.
But to just make people aware here, because myself I'm a bit hazy in this, what's the difference between a post-shot XG and XG?
So the difference, XG, and there's different models. There's StatsBomb, there's FotMob, there's Y-Scout, there's loads of different models. So everybody will do it differently. So, but they're done through hundreds of thousands of shots and an average position of where the shot. Some providers will take different things into consideration about height of the ball, how many defenders, etc., etc. But to all intents and purposes, it's whereabouts is the shot from, the angle from, do you know what I mean? And that's what one of the main ones. So a shot inside the box is obviously going to have a better chance. So your XG is when that ball lands to the forward, what's the probability of scoring? So if it's an XG of 0.4, there's a 40% chance that they're going to score based on historical research of all shots from that position. Post-shot XG is after the shot's done. So when that player takes the shot, so if that player takes a shot and it's a 0.8 post-shot XG, then that's an 80% chance of going in. So what that does, that measures from a shot from that distance and at that angle. So basically, a shot with an XG of 0.4 and it's 40%. If that person shoots and it's off target, the post-shot XG is 0 because So and then, but if you like Giakoumakis at the weekend, his header had a 0.018 XG, but he had a 0.8 post-shot XG because that chance where it came to him, it would say 18% of the time he would score. But after he's headed that would say 80% of the time that's going in. It's probably, rather than measuring finishing post-shot XG, it's probably better for measuring goalkeepers. So it's saying 80% of the time Craig Gordon's not going to save that. And if you look at over a season, how many does he save more than he should, if you know what I mean? So probably better for measuring goalkeeper performance. But it's obviously, if I've got it there, why not use it for measuring forwards as well? And I think when it backs up that theory for Europe, as in we're not, and it was also a couple of league games just before that as well, was the same, that the post shot was underperforming the XG. It probably makes sense that some of these players at Champions League level for the first time and just not got that confidence yet.
Yeah, I think Patrick McLaughlin sums it up as well. I think we just snatched at the chances at the crucial point in European games. We were maybe just inexperienced at the high pressure moments, which again could come into the factor.
Yeah, the stats back that up, you know what I mean?
And then as well, if you were listening to the podcast on Friday, you mentioned Craig Gordon. Ross apparently thinks he's world class. Absolutely mental, like, isn't it? To say that. But in terms of, you look at the XG of the strikers and stuff like that, and Kyogo started against Leipzig. Do you think maybe there's a case to be made if Giakoumakis started some of these European games, we could have took advantage of the attacking moments?
So it's a difficult one. I've thought about this, and for me, I would have liked to see Giakoumakis play against Leipzig, but I can see the arguments for all the ones that would say that Kyogo should start, because I think for me, when you're up against a better team, Kyogo's movement is something that could be valuable. I think when you're in the league and you're up against a team that we're better than, I think Giakoumakis is definitely got to be a shout there. Do you know what I mean? But when it comes to Europe, we're needing the chances. Has he got more confidence? Personally, I would have went for. I'll go for Giakoumakis, and I can equally see why people would say that's ridiculous, because Kyogo's a far better player at that level, and it's the movement, and it's the whole game, and it's a game of chess, and Kyogo's movement, etc. The one thing I would have said though, when you marry that in with the fact that we had to play Abada and Maeda, which is not great for being creative during the game, then how not play Abada or Maeda? Pick one of them, have Giakoumakis in the middle, and play Kyogo wide left. Kyogo played wide left when he was in Japan for some games. He played wide left at the start when Edward was just leaving. We were complaining about that at Ibrox because we wanted him in the middle, and I would have played him in the middle with Edward wide left. But he did set up, playing wide left, he did set up a tap-in for Edward that day. It was Edward that missed it. And then I think it might have been the St Mirren game after, he played wide left as well. So Kyogo wide left, Giakoumakis, and then either Abada or Maeda. Some might ridicule that suggestion, but I wouldn't have been adverse to that.
Well, see, to be fair, right, we'll get into a wee rabbit hole here, Tony, because you brought it up, and we spoke about it as well, me and Stuart, actually, in terms of where could Kyogo and Giakoumakis fit in with each other. It's a two-pronged one I'm going to come at you with. In terms of stats, maybe you haven't looked far into it, which is fair enough, but what you can see with a playing eye, in terms of stats, I would say Giakoumakis starting games scores more goals. There was a thing put out today saying, what was it, 24 starts, 21 goals or something like that, and in total, like, it's 40-odd games, which is absolutely incredible return when you're starting in games. But coming at you as well, you said Kyogo played for Faisal Kobe on the left in some games, which is 100% correct. We all seen it in the YouTube footage. And then when he came in, he was thrusted in that side again at Ibrox with Edward, who really checked out at that point, playing in a high-pressure environment. Do you think that is a viable option? And also, do you not think they're going to lose something if they do that? If you're dropping Yada, Haksabanovic, who has moved into the 10 role, obviously, but there could be some players unhappy with that. You could possibly sell anyway.
Yeah, there could be some players unhappy, but I think at the moment, if you're using that argument, Giakoumakis has got every right to be unhappy. So, like, I would rather Giakoumakis not unhappy than someone else. Yeah, and I did actually look at the stats for like starting games. So for Kyogo, when games that he started 31 games and scored 23 goals. So a goal, 0.74 goals per game. And Giakoumakis has started 21, scored 21, so a goal per game. But what I thought was really interesting as well. So out of the 31 games for Kyogo, he scored in 16 because there's been some hat tricks in there as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So 52% of the games he started, he scored. So that's a phenomenal record for Kyogo. Giakoumakis has scored in 15 out of the 21 games he started. So 71% of the games that Giakoumakis has started, he scored a goal. That is unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? That's just not like the total amount of goals. That's him scoring. When you start him, he'll score.
Yeah. But see the one as well on the left, right, with Kyogo. What I was trying to imply there is, are you not losing a bit of him in terms of playing him on the left? The defensive qualities that Postecoglou likes in his wingers coming back and tracking. I can't really see Kyogo doing a Maeda type shift or even the Yada. So is that a viable option for big games, or is that one you would throw in for like a cup game? Or
I think for me, if you're talking about everybody fit, then you're probably looking at, and I talk about a Champions League game. If you're talking about a Champions League game, everybody fit, for me, then you're probably looking at Kyogo in the middle, Jota and Maeda as your two wingers, because Jota's got that creativity that we talked about, and Maeda's got that work rate and that making something happen. So for your big games, I think that's your three. The reason that I said for the game there, Jota was out, and also we weren't playing Haksabanovic on the wing because we were using him as a number 10. So our wingers were Abada and Maeda. So what I'm saying is, in that instance, when you've got Abada and Maeda as your winger options, I think Giakoumakis with Kyogo and one of them would probably be in a better front three.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
But everybody fit. When you've got Jota in the mix, then it's a different argument then.
It's interesting. Russell Bhoys comes in from his channel, the Boise Bus, and Giakoumakis starts are more often paced out as the opponent to a decent standard 10-game streak, incredible 71%. It is, to be fair, in terms of his record coming in. And I think, again, it's one of these ones like Kyogo. I think we've all fell in love with Kyogo, haven't we, Tony? We've took him into our hearts, and the same with Giakoumakis, even though we had that shaky start at Celtic, the penalty miss when we played Livingston in the last minute and stuff like that. So it's a difficult one to say who would be first choice. I think there's games, in my personal opinion, that suit them. So you could put a Kyogo in against a team who play a high line to get in behind, Giakoumakis against a team who sits back with strong central defenders and playing off him. Would you be along them lines as well?
Yeah, I think you can look at, as you say, horses for courses, and look at games that suit both, and there could be an argument for picking one over the other. And yeah, probably the European games would be. I think if you looked at the league games, you could probably say Kyogo just ahead of Giakoumakis, but I would say Giakoumakis gives him a good run for his money. I think when it's your European games, you just say that gap's just a little bit more, and Kyogo's more of the choice. But again, it depends who's playing. I think if you're missing something elsewhere, is there an option? Because sometimes, and Ange's flirted with it now and again during games where he's played the two of them, he's played Kyogo just sort of behind them.
Yeah, he done that on the weekend, didn't he? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. He brought Kyogo on and played him just in behind, didn't he, Giakoumakis?
The Hibs game, was it a Hibs game for a little spell?
Aye, and then he got injured. So he did. Yeah. Which didn't really go well. But we'll kind of talk about the Champions League again here. And one player I do want to speak about is Matt O'Reilly, Tony. And the podcast before the RB Leipzig game at home, me and William were on, and we're basically not ridiculing him, but saying he's not a number 6. He can't do that against a team like Leipzig who are on you in a flash. They can press you, they can do everything. But from the naked eye, I know you've got stats and stuff. I seen him get stuck in. He was making tackles. He was breaking up play. He was spreading the balls, like one-touch passing through the midfield, which was fantastic. And you look at Cal McGregor, his influence in the team, which again is incredible. But in my honest opinion, I thought he was not at his best, Cal McGregor, this season in certain games, and I think it's fair to say that. And the rest, sometimes, although it's injury, could maybe do him the world of good coming back in fresh again. But what's Matt already done for you? Because for me in that 6 role, I thought it would have been Moy. I think most of us would have thought it would have been Moy, but he's been pushed up. And I really think Matt already's took his game to another level playing there.
Yeah, I mean, I know I defended Moy after the St Mirren game just because of who he sort of partnered in midfield, never the opportunity with who he did in the Hibs game. Do you know what I mean? But I probably wasn't necessarily a fan of Moy for the defensive role, given that my concerns with McGregor there is just that defensive solidity, especially against better teams. Do you know what I mean? I was really gobsmacked when we went with O'Reilly, Hatate and Haksabanovic as a 3 in a European game, because Haksabanovic is good going forward, but is he good enough defensively in a midfield 3? I'm not sure. And then O'Reilly in there at that role of a novice, I thought it was a big risk, and I thought Abelgard had to start, but I didn't think he would.
We spoke about that, didn't we?
Minutes, do you know what I mean? They never get any minutes, but and the Abelgard one's a mystery, because anytime I've seen the little bits of clips I've seen him, he looks very much as the profile we got. The profile was he'll win headers, he'll win tackles. He's right up there as, if not elite, but a very good defensive midfielder. Where he was maybe average or not the best was like passing and the progressive passes that McGregor and O'Reilly will do. But I just thought, in a game, like, if you look at, people talk about defensive midfielders and we've got to go for it. Leipzig played 2 defensive midfielders. Do you know what I mean? They played 2. So I think you've got to get it right at that level. And I'm surprised that Abelgard didn't get the start. And people could say Andrew was proved right, because O'Reilly did individually played really well, tackles, passes, mobility, but individually it might have looked well, but we didn't win the game. So I don't know, but yeah, individually O'Reilly looked to be playing the role well.
Is there any stats about that to back it up in terms of passing or anything at all?
So let me see for that game. It's hard. It's a hard one. The defensive midfielder. So O'Reilly, the defensive midfield, 85% pass rate for that game, 40 accurate passes. It's a hard one. How do you measure a defensive midfielder? Are you breaking up the play, tackles, and wins? And I think it could look probably more into it. And on his defence that night, tackles 1 3 out of 8, recoveries 7, duels 1 10 out of 19. So probably because he won the tackles and the sliding tackles, they look better rather than maybe they are. But no, I, to be fair, I thought he played well. But
the Abelgard one, it's a strange one, because when he came on away to Leipzig, he looked all right. Now, obviously, you can see the kind of the rustiness about him and not playing much competitive football since he left Ruben Kazan. But he did the things that you expect a tall 6'4" midfielder to do. He got his foot in the ball. He was winning headers, and he came on in, when was it? He came on in the weekend, or I'm pretty sure it was, and he looked terrible. I don't know what's going on with him. He doesn't look quite up to speed. Is it purely just fitness, Tony, or is it just one of them things that maybe we'll just take away?
I don't know. It can't be that much fitness, because he's getting selected to come in, and he's been training now for a while, so it wasn't like he's been out injured. Do you know what I mean? He never had a club, so yeah, he'd be a bit getting up to speed. But it's a strange one, because if the reason that he's not getting picked is because he doesn't have that passing ability that Ange likes for a number 6, and he hasn't progressed in the ball like at number 6, well, that's in his profile. So why did we sign him?
Yeah, exactly. And Billy comes in here, which is interesting, Tony. Alan said he does not play with a defensive midfielder, but a deep line playmaker. What's the difference? What difference is apart from a complete lack of defensive awareness? I don't know. Again, Ange did actually say that, so maybe O'Reilly's kind of fitting that profile. Now, we'll kind of move on to the defensive side of things in Europe, and that's another 2 goals conceded.
Oh, sorry,
Tony, go ahead.
Stephen, just on the when you were I forgot about when you were asking about O'Reilly and the Leipzig game. So he had 32 successful pressures. 32 pressures, sorry. So he had the most pressures, and he had 40 accurate passes, which was more than McGregor and Abogard in the previous game combined. So there was some stats, but yeah, the pressures that O'Reilly. I put some tweets out about pressures and the success of the pressures, and O'Reilly came out as having the most.
Yeah, I mean that bodes well as well. I mean, we spoke about pressures and things, and that kind of is what Postecoglou's looking for, isn't it? That type of high tempo pressing the opposition, and all that type of stuff. So O'Reilly must be fitting the bill in some sort of way there. And since McGregor's been injured, he's been in that position.
And I put out before about the pressures. We were in the top of the Champions League teams for final third pressures, and yeah, we were leading XG till 55 minutes and then tailing off. And you're wondering if the players were just tired. But it was interesting that our defensive pressures ramped up in the last game, and the percentage across like the top third, middle third, and defensive third changed, and the we weren't fully on the front third. So it looks like there's been a tweak there. And also in the game, we didn't die off in the 55th minute like we did in previous games. We kept the XG performance above Leipzig most of the game, apart from a couple of little spells. So there might have been lessons learned there.
Yeah, and speaking about the defensive side of things here, Tony, as you said there, you've seen a wee bit of a tweak with O'Reilly playing that position in terms of that area he's covering for McGregor. Another 2 goals conceded in European football. A couple of shaky performances. Not really much in terms of hefty defeats, but we're conceding goals instead of scoring them at that level. Is there anything concerning you from that in terms of what you're seeing defensively at the moment?
No, I think looking at the stats before the game, I've not looked at it since, but before the game, I think we were top, if not in the top 3, but I think we were top in the Champions League for XG conceded from set plays. So we get a reputation of being a team that concedes from set plays. So to have conceded the least XG from set plays in the Champions League of 32 teams is pretty good going. I think we've been a bit unlucky. That unluckiness has come from a bit of not finishing our chances, which comes from a bit of nervousness, as some listeners said earlier on. And I think you also have to look into the consideration as well that against Leipzig, we're missing Jota. Because you can't ignore that. 42% of our XG, 42% of our chances in the first 3 games has came from Jota's contribution. So to lose that out of the team and still have more XG than your opponents, a good team like Leipzig, from a performance point of view, you've got to be happy with that. We didn't die off in the 55th minute like we previously did. You've got to be happy with that. Really, for the Leipzig game, we never finished our chances. We had poor post-shot XG, and I think that's a bit, and I think it makes common sense to think that's just people needing confidence at that level, maybe snatching at it.
Yeah, and Monty comes in here. I think it's a good question. Would any of you take Jens on a permanent signing, or can we do better? Tony, what's your opinion on him so far?
A lot of people have slated him. I've liked him from the start. Maybe he's not been put under pressure defensively enough, and he's just maybe looked a luxury defender as such. You know what I mean? He's came in at time at tackles when it's been easy, but he was playing alongside Welsh for a little bit, who's not our first team centre back. You know what I mean? I think he's better when he's in the side CCV. I would sign him permanently because he's young. He's still going to improve. He'll improve in the area. He's decent enough on the ball. He seems to have the good attitude. He's bought into the club. So yeah, I would sign him. And I think he'll also be content of being third choice centre back as well. So I think to get someone who's going to be content as well, because if you do sign someone better, are they going to be content being third choice? They're going to be first two. Although for me, you ideally you'd want a left-sided centre back who like Guardiola from Leipzig, a left-sided centre back, brilliant on the ball, can help build up attacks. And then you've got Starfelt and Jens as your third and fourth choice. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so someone to be better than Starfelt, and maybe Jens will challenge Starfelt for that eventually. But ideally you want someone better, and Starfelt and Jens as your third and fourth.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I like the look of Jens. I get 100% what you mean in the likes of the league games. He can look like he's this big imposing defender who can well time the tackles, win headers and stuff. But I thought he was excellent in that Leipzig game at home with Carter Vickers back in. They were throwing their bodies in front of shots, tackling, last ditch defending, all that type of stuff. And by the way, we encourage all this at direction because this is a learning process for us all. And this whole XG stuff and stats is very interesting. So get involved. And Tony, another one to throw at you here. Strange Love Doctor. I think the defence in Europe needs to push up and stay connected to the mid and attack. It's a space in there that opens when they step off the front foot, and that's been exploited. Now, we spoke about this previously. There's in the RB Leipzig game away, there was gaps all over the pitch, and you could see it from the pictures that were going around social media. I'm with Strange Love the Doctor in this one. I think to be successful in an environment like that, albeit it might not stop you conceding goals and conceding chances to the opposition, but when you're tighter to your front third, middle third, and defensive quarter, you're going to concede less chances and you're going to be more compact, and you can also press in a unit instead of having that disjointed type look about you. If O'Reilly presses, there's no one beside him. Hatate triggers a press. Giacomakis isn't running. So there's all different things. You can be better, more compact. What do you think about that? Because I think that's a valuable point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was when I was highlighting about the pressures from that front third. It was leaving us exposed in there. It's maybe understandable, and it's probably the only time you've sort of heard Ange criticise the team recently was, I think it was he criticised the team after Leipzig when we scored the equaliser. He said that we dropped back and we're pushed back, so it's pushing that line up. So yeah, no, definitely, I think it's we need to be braver when we're taking the shots to finish our chances, but we need to be braver as well to just play a normal game. It's easy to be scared and just say we're playing against a good team here. They beat us the last game. Let's drop back a bit. But I think you need to just be brave and push that line up. So you're asking your defenders and team to be brave as well as your forwards. You're asking the defenders to push up and trust the process. Mm-hmm. But I did notice when at the game, I seen Juranovic quite a lot of the times shouting across the line and sort of shouting push up, do you know what I mean, and pushing the back line up, which I thought was really good to see, and it's obviously something they've worked on, and it's good that if you've got a back four that at times all of them have sort of really just done man of match performances. So like Ralston's came in, done man of match performances, Bernabé's done it, and Juranovic, Greg Taylor's done it all season. CCV, do you know what I mean? And even Jens, because even at the weekend, Bernabé and Ralston, I thought were struggling. It might have just been with the formation of Hearts with their wide players on top of them, etc. That I thought they were struggling. But I did tweet during the game. I thought Jens was one of the better players just before he gave away the penalty. But yeah. It's good that they can all sort of work together, and I think it'll be interesting though, because against Shakhtar on Tuesday night, Shakhtar are a team that won't attack us as much as Leipzig, and they'll love that space in behind because that's what they play on. They play on that counter attack. 5 shots against Leipzig and scored 4 goals. So will that worry us on Tuesday night? But yeah, no, I think you're bang on. I think the only way you can get better at that is just playing the games and just learning from your mistakes.
Yeah, 100%. The whole issue with me, and that, especially that away game, Tony, we actually spoke about it previously before. The gaps were massive, and one pass that they were through and they were on top of us. Amante comes in here. I know we kind of went off in the tangent, but it's great anyway. See when CCV, Starfield, and the ends are all fit, would that not give us the option to go 3-5-2, which will then play us, Kyogo, and Gigi at the same time? Can you see that happening? I know before in Japan, he did play a 3-5-2 formation with his previous team. I've seen clips of that and I've seen people actually say it. So could that be something he could experiment with, or is it just strictly 4-3-3?
I don't think so. I'm not saying he wouldn't rule it out in every. I mean, he done 3-5-2 versus St Johnstone in Boxing Day. He played 3-5-2, but I think that was just about squad availability rather than anything else. But he done it that day, so I think it's something he could do. But the inverted fullbacks is a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. So do you give that up? You put in wing backs, etc. I can't. It's working as well. So 3-5-2 might be something that maybe in Europe, if we're going to try and do something different. But I think Ange's one that sticks to these guns, but it's going relatively well for him so far. Europe performance has been okay, results haven't, and domestically has been brilliant. So I can't see him changing. Because the other thing about if you go 3-5-2 and one of them gets injured, you've not really got
exactly.
You've not really got the cover there, because I don't think we're necessarily great for cover just now at centre back when we're playing two centre backs. So you go three, you don't have the cover. One of them gets injured or suspended or something, then you'd have to change formation again. So personally, I can't see it, but I wouldn't say 100% he wouldn't do it. But I think the formation he has just now is what he'll continue to go with.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think as well, as you mentioned, the cover's a big issue there at centre back. If one of them get injured, like a CCV or Starfield, then you're kind of snookered again. You're back to the 4-3-3 anyway. So it's a bit counterproductive when you don't have the adequate resources to do it. I mean, you could possibly do it in a one-off league game or a cup game, which is fair enough. But I think going forward, it's going to be the 4-3-3. But to kind of round off the Champions League chat, Tony, Postecoglou again gets his usual shitty questions from the media, basically saying we're Celtic belong at this level, all that type of stuff. And as usual, the big man comes out swinging. He says we've been competitive in all our games, and also not to throw us in the same bracket, kind of paraphrasing a bit, the same bracket as the other two teams involved in European football from the Scottish Premiership. In terms of stats, Tony, attacking ways, overall, defensive covers, whatever it may be, does it show we're competing very well?
Yeah, I mean, as you say on the XG, then against Leipzig at home, where the XG difference was 0.31 in our favour. Against Shakhtar, it was 1.1 in our favour. So we all agree we should have won that.
Yep.
And then we were 0.57 deficit to Real Madrid and 1.33 to Leipzig. But both of them were game state ones as well. So basically, we against Real Madrid and against Leipzig away, we were leading XG to 55 minutes, and then we tailed off in the end. So if we take our chances in the first 55 minutes, it could be a different game against them, because it's them chasing, so we're not chasing as much, we're not as tired. Things could change. They could still win, but for 55 minutes, we were the better team against Leipzig away and Real Madrid at home. And we were the better team against Shakhtar and the better team Leipzig at home, if you're looking at XG. So that's pretty good going for someone who's not going to be pragmatic and just trying to win that short-term game. Someone who's looking at the longer picture and saying, I'm going to come into this and play the way that I want to play all the time. So yeah, you could maybe get better results if you've been pragmatic in short-term, but that's not going to do us good for the long term. So I'm just coming in long term. We're going to play the way we want to play all the time. We're going to come in. We're going to learn. So with that in mind and the performances so far, then I think we've got to be relatively happy. I mean, as fans, the start of the season, we were all like, "Yeah, and stick by your principles." Yeah, and that's going to be hard in Champions League. Yeah, and we're probably going to get beat in Champions League. So everybody came with that. And then as soon as we get beat, everybody's like, "Oh, this is not good enough." I mean, against Real Madrid, we got beat 3-0 and everybody was saying great performance. Then when we get beat 3-1 by Leipzig, in Leipzig, everybody was like disaster. And I'm like, well, if you looked at probabilities before the game, the betting probabilities, the prices were the same for Real Madrid to win at Celtic Park as it was Leipzig at home. So it's the same probabilities, although a better team, but one was at home. So 3-1 away to Leipzig isn't anywhere near as bad as 3-0 at home to Real Madrid. Yeah, everybody thought Real Madrid was great and Leipzig was terrible. So I think we underestimated Leipzig. And again, probably because of the Shakhtar result. Shakhtar beating Leipzig 4-1. Everybody thought Leipzig weren't as good as they were. But I had reservations going into Leipzig. They're a very good team. And they're going to get better this year. And I think we can't feel disgraced that a good team like that has beat us. And we did push them quite far.
I think most of that reaction was due to the results in the previous year against another club across the city. People were kind of reacting that. Obviously, they've changed their coach and different philosophies and processes as we are in one ourselves. And Frank Brennan comes in here. Frank Brennan's usually the guy who comes in with a bit of, I wouldn't say controversy, but he tries to speak his mind. The one and only biggest problem for us against Shakhtar on Tuesday night is it'll be a case, yet again, of us being completely dead on our feet after 60 minutes and still expecting to win. Now, you touched upon the kind of tweak that happened when O'Reilly fitted into that number 6 role and there was more kind of defensive cover and more pressures in that area. Do you think that's the reason possibly why we didn't kind of tail off after the 50th or 60th minute in the home leg against them?
No, I think it might have been to do with the pressures. So if you looked at I've got the pressures up here. Where was that? Shakhtar game, Leipzig game. So if you look at the pressures against Real Madrid at home, 41% of our pressures were in the final third. Against Shakhtar away, 41% of our pressures were in the final third. Against Leipzig away, 42% of our pressures were in the final third. And Leipzig at home, that reduced to 30%. So we're not pressing in much in that final third. And if you look at the Leipzig at home game, we didn't tail off in the XG in the 55 minutes like we did in the previous two.
But is that a case of an even spread across the team? So you're laughing there at Maltese comment. Is that a case of an even spread? So effectively, let's look at it from this angle. We all know the front three like to press, whether it's Maeda, Jota, Giakoumakis, or Kuo's thrown in there. They're pressing from the front foot. But now, is it a tweaking system, or is it because O'Reilly is playing in there and they're the number 6 and they're not trying to overexpose them if they break the press and they're kind of being more compact in that sense and pressing from the middle third instead of the front third?
Possibly, I think actually maybe the reverse of that. I think then maybe more so in the league games where we might get better. So I think from a number 10 position, I think Hatate will be a better presser than O'Reilly. And that might suit us better. So the last 3 games, the last 3 games we have when we played Moy in there, Hatate's been the one that does the most pressing out of the 3 midfielders, and I think he's more equipped to do that pressing and get back in and help after he's done the pressing. So I think that'll help us.
But what I'm saying is, right, so you said that the first couple of games, 41%, 42%, and then a massive drop to 30% with the defensive area making more pressures. Is that a game management sort of thing that Ange has done there, or is that just? I
think that, I don't know. I mean, you can maybe look at the players. I could maybe go away and have a look at what the players' difference was, because I've got the pressures and put them up. But I think that's probably more a management tweak rather than any individual players.
See, that's interesting. That means he is capable of a plan B, the way people say. He's not in terms of tailing off his plan A. I know it's always do plan A better and things like that. But, yeah, I mean, if you're tweaking that and you can see the difference and the team didn't tail off, maybe that's the way to go in Europe. Would you not say so yourself, Tony?
Yeah, I'll have a wee look at that. Pressures from individual players, differences with that 2 game to that game. I think Maeda won the most pressures, and I don't know if it's maybe that combination of Maeda and Abada that I didn't like because of the lack of creativity. Maybe that helps pressures. Then saying that, Abada's the worst performer for pressures. So I noticed that Abada in the 4 games, Abada's had 11 pressures, which is the lowest. Pressures per 90 is the lowest of any of the forwards. The Jota's next at 13. However, Abada has got 0% wins out of the pressures.
That's interesting.
So that was quite interesting to note that.
In terms of pressures as well, Tony, like in the broad sense, that means pressing, doesn't it? Basically pressing the opposition.
Yeah, so you have pressures and successful pressures. So pressures is pressing the opposition, and then successful ones is regaining the ball, basically. There'll be different providers have different measures for it, but the one I use is like FBref. It's really good. I'd love to see it for the league. The league, you need to look at the sort of Y-Scout ones, but for the Champions League, it's useful. And I put out a wee tweet on my page, CelticTrends.com, and I'll share it after the show. The one I did for the 4 games, but that's just the 4 games in total. So I'll look at maybe the differences to see if there is anything there. But my gut feeling is it's a management tweak, just because it's like as a team, and even just at the game, seeing Juranovic pushing them up, and I think it's just a better structured performance, and also just the previous game in Leipzig. And said psychologically the team just looked as if they got the equaliser and they stepped back, and it was just a bit of sort of trying to protect what they had rather than just being confident to follow the process.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? The Abada one's very interesting, to be fair, Tony. I mean, he scores goals for fun sometimes, but in other areas he dips off. I mean, dribbles as well. I don't think he really beats a man, and assists and goals, yeah, he's great at. But as you said, pressures, to be winning 0% or what if that's what you said there, I mean, that's incredible. That needs to improve in my opinion. Like,
and it's interesting because sometimes you look at stats and you go, yeah, that backs up what I thought. Do you know what I mean? But other times I was like, oh, I wouldn't have jumped out. If you see Abada low on dribble success rate, you would get that because that's what you expect. But I didn't expect that. You expect high from Maeda, but you don't necessarily expect low from Abada. But that was interesting when it came out. So is one that I'll keep an eye on. Do you know what I mean? Like, visually, it's good when you see something in the stats to say the stats can be misleading as well, because they don't. It's a context as well. You need to have your eye. You need to have the outcome. So like for goals, you need the XG as the stats behind it. You need the actual goals as the outcome, and then you need your eye and your visual. You need the 3 of them to get that quality sort of observation. So, but I think I'll have a wee look at Abada if he's playing, just to see how he's pressing.
But we'll round off that Champions League chat. That was great, Tony, and we'll move on to the Celtic and Hibs game shortly after that RB Leipzig game. Now, this is the game that's kind of kicked off this kind of go run of form for Celtic. 14 goals in 3 games, I believe. 6, 4, and 4. So that's a cracking return in terms of a team who couldn't take their chances in previous games. But we'll just get stuck into it. There was a lot of rotation in that there. I mean, Moy came in, Forrest came in, Haksabanovic was playing as well, Burnaby came in, Ralston, them types of players. In terms of the rotation itself, now Hibs are coming in. Lee Johnson is very big on stats. I know that for a fact because I used to follow him at Bristol, because I kind of liked his management style and stuff. He's kind of tailed off at Hibs. I don't know what's going on, but he's definitely a stat man. But looking at that game, I mean, 20 shots for us, 9 shots for them, 9 shots on target. They must get 6 goals. They get 5 shots on targets for 1 goal, 58% possession, 42% for them, 521 passes, 383 for Hibs. Absolute domination, Tony.
Yeah. So if you look at the XG, we're 2.74 versus 0.44. So 2.3 of an XG difference. However, that was less than the Motherwell, which was 3.11. People might be gobsmacked to hear because they'll say on domination. So I think there's 2 things about that. One is obviously they're just stats. They don't tell the full story. The second thing is game state as well. So if Celtic score, Hibs have to come out, score early, and different styles you're up against as well. So Hibs might be looking a bit more longer term and saying quite happy to keep the same style and a bit risky against Celtic, whereas Motherwell might look at it as he has a chance to close up or do a different style. So for stats, it looked like a good performance, but not necessarily any better on expected chances versus other teams were faced. The big one that jumped out though was the post shot versus XG that we talked about earlier, where we underperformed that. It was only 18%. So the post shot was 67% more than XG. So it looks like we've got our finishing boots on for this game. As many look at stats, we might call it mean reversion or other words. I'm not necessarily a buyer into that, but we seem to have a good post shot XG and good finishing on the day.
And one man in particular.
Okay. I think we had a good team selection. So people said that the St Mirren game that we made too many changes, and I said that day, and I said on here that I wasn't against 6 changes. It was more what was the team selection. It wasn't about the 6 changes. It was who did we select? What was the combination? So Abada, Maeda, Moy playing alongside McGregor. Do you know what I mean? McGregor's getting older and Moy's in there. So I think the selection was good. So we'll bring in 2 fresh fullbacks who you get to impress. Ralston, Bernabeit can offer something. We got the balance right with Moy. So O'Reilly's been obviously trialled at that number 6 role. But getting Moy and his ability to influence the game and his creativity, getting him on the ball. But Hatate doing the Hatate doing that sort of pressure role out the attack, the midfield 3, the more attacking side of it, and allows Moy to be the creativity bit. So it was a different dynamic. But what I noticed in that was, from about, I think it was the Rangers game, or maybe the game before, but or maybe the Rangers game, that we were more a 4-2-3-1. Hatate and McGregor were pretty much similar position-wise. And then I've noticed from the Hibs game, it's been more the 4-3-3, where Hatate and Moy have been similar. So that it's more a 4-3-3. It's just a small tweak. So I think the midfield was right. But then you go back to the wingers, what we talked about before. So then you've got Haksabanovic, who has he's 0.98 expected assists per 90, which is just phenomenal. So he's been a creative spark. Then you've got Forrest, who I'd put in my comments about the Leipzig game, that he was the player worth noting from the Leipzig game on his stats from the Leipzig game. So I think from what I put the Leipzig game, I put in player watch. Forrest had 14 accurate passes, 0.31 XA, and 60% successful pressures. So you don't see Forrest as a player that pressures, but he had 60%. And that was in that 0.31 XA was coming on as a sub. So I think Forrest's inclusion was a good one. And Haksabanovic, you've got the creativity, and obviously we talked about Giakoumakis before. So I think against Hibs, make the changes, but it's the team selection, and the team selection I think was bang on against Hibs.
Yeah, and we'll speak about one man in particular, like you just mentioned there, player watch, James Forrest, who came in the RB Leipzig game as a sub, and then started the game against Hibs and scored a hat-trick, finally over 100 goals now for Celtic. Absolute club legend in my opinion. I know that word's banded around a lot, but he is a club legend for what he's done, what he's achieved. Even his assist, I think he's on 98, Tony, which is fantastic. But you mentioned stats there, and the RB Leipzig game coming into the Hibs game. Did you expect him to start? For me, that when I seen him on the team sheet, and I know someone corrected me in my podcast, I thought I predicted Maeda would start, but apparently I said Forrest. But yeah, even at that, I was still effectively like Forrest, a wee bit like, nah, because I think, me personally, when I've seen him, he hasn't been his best. He looks a bit slow. But for me, I'll be honest, a wee bit of humble pie. He looked quick, he looked dynamic. Even when he came on against RB Leipzig, he was taking their fullback on as well. So what's the stats and stuff said about him at this moment in time?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. He's even like last year when he wasn't at his best and he came in, the little cameo roles he was playing, his stats were still good. you know what I mean? So if you look at the stats for the season, his XG per 90 is 0.82.
Is this season?
This season, yeah, 0.82. Obviously, it's per 90, and 1.19 post shot XG per game, and then for XA just 0.15, so a little bit less on creativity, but he's scoring. But again, just getting into the positions. The one thing about Forrest is that he scored goals over the years, and you probably just maybe take them for granted. So I think the team selection was good against Hibs, and it was wondering how Ange was going to play it. Like, right, so who's he going to play then? Motherwell, then Hearts? Because I thought right, if you're changing the fullbacks, I thought it was a bit of a surprise that he brought in Bernabeu and Robson for the Hearts game. But I think it would be Juranovic and Taylor for Leipzig. So it sort of makes sense the way it was going. But that maybe underestimated Hearts a little bit, I think. But I think Forrest deserved his chance. And when he wasn't playing against Motherwell, people were like, "Oh, he played 2 games in a row." I thought he would be playing on Saturday, but I don't think he'll play on Tuesday. I think, but he'll be used to come on. I think Tuesday it will be Maeda and Haksabanovic. It'll be the 2 wide ones. They say Jota. I don't think Jota will be fit. I've seen in Leipzig. I watched Jota at the end of the game and he held his hamstring. And I tweeted this. He held his hamstring, and I thought, rest him against St Johnstone. Or I imagine he'll be rested. I couldn't believe when I see him play. He get taken off at half time. I've not seen anything where it says what his injury is, but I'd be surprised to see Jota on Tuesday.
Bit disappointing that actually happened, and Soix, I hope it's Soix, I'm saying that right. I was just trying to bring Celtic into the 21st century. About time we focused on pure football and just get better at it, and it'll benefit us from years to come. Obviously, in terms of that, you look at that going, patience from the football supporters, like you said, Tony. We went into this Champions League campaign probably expecting a few defeats, but when you first face that, you're like, come on, what's going on here? And you kind of give a knee-jerk reaction like I do all the time. But on that point, it kind of brings me to the next one. Playing this pure football system with no kind of type of alteration. I know sometimes you bring on Giakoumakis for a long ball and things like that. Do you think that's the right way? I know he's aligned the B team with Celtic's first team, and Michael Ross, this is kind of add this in, Rocco Fata the latest player to leave before he gets first team football? I hope not. But do you think the pathway is there at this moment in time while Ange is still here?
I don't think so. No, I don't think the pathway is there. I think so. If you're 5-1 up against Hibs, surely that's a time to bring on a youth player. You bring on a youth player, whether it's Kenny up front, or it's Scott Robertson in midfield, or it's Boston Lowell. When you bring a player on that, it's an easy opportunity. The fans are forgiven, even if they make a mistake. If they come on, score a goal, or do something well, they build confidence. You can bring them in, you build them up. But again, you've got to give McCarthy, etc., minutes to keep them happy, because you're going to need them. But where's the pathway for the young kids? You need to bring the young kids in, because if you bring the young kids in, some of them could blossom like Tierney did, and some of them will blossom, and you can either make money from them or will be better players. You need to have a pathway, and we've got a pathway opportunity in the league where if we're beating teams comfortably, we can take that risk. Because when we played the youngsters with the Dubai debacle, we played the youngsters, and people say, "Oh, no wonder the youngsters didn't get a game because they came in and have done nothing." But you can't bring a youngster in and play him alongside 10 other youngsters. You know what I mean? You've got to bring a youngster in and play him alongside 10 other great players who are all playing at the peak, and that's when they'll learn and they'll shine, and you give them a bit of confidence. So I'm a bit worried that there's nothing coming through from the B team, and if the B team's not good enough, fair enough. But then we need to go out and sign someone who is better than the B team at that young age, so that they can be in the pathway. But would we do that, and would we give them the opportunities? I'm not convinced we would. And
go ahead, sorry.
And it's about playing people at the right team, because we talked about the team selection against Hibs being right, and I mentioned that after the St Mirren game, when everybody was on Moyes back, I said that he was playing alongside Turnbull most of the time, and Turnbull's not necessarily had a great season. But the two players that are dynamic and been brilliant for us in midfield are Hatate and O'Reilly, and Moy never got that opportunity to play alongside them. Plays his first game alongside them against Hibs, and he gets 2 assists, he gets XA, and his assists per 90, I think, is the top in the league now, boy, and his XA per 90 is up. Do you know what I mean? So he's been coming in and creating chances. Do you know what I mean? So.
I mean, you said stats are misleading. We'll keep it at that one for Moy. But like, Monty comes in here as well. Rocco Fada seems to be linked with top clubs in Europe. So look at Ben Doak, who went to the Liverpool under 23 squad, and he's ripping up trees in the Youth Champions League as well. But Tony, that's a debate to have for another day in terms of the pathway, which I very much look forward to as well. But you mentioned a player in that Hibs game, Haksabanovic. Now, I've said in the podcast previously, he reminds me of a Chris Commons type player. The way he can take the ball, both-footed, can ping passes, can score goals, can take players on, albeit obviously he's a better version of Chris Commons, in my opinion. When he gets them goals into his game, he will be flying. I think he'll take his game to another level. But have you been impressed by Haksabanovic's impact, especially since Jota is out injured, as you said there, and he's kind of come in, and he's not seamlessly took over. He has a different dynamic than Jota, but he's offering us something different.
Yeah, no, I like him. When I first seen him as a winger, I was a bit like, he's got ability, but I wasn't sure about his pace. So I was thinking, he could do a job in Scotland, but in Europe, I'm not sure, because I don't think he's necessarily slow, but he's not got that blistering pace that you would need at that level. When I seen him in the number 10 role against St Johnstone, I thought he was man of the match that day, and he played well. Yep. And I thought that could have been his position. But against Hibs, it was brilliant. I think he's got a role to play as a wide player or a number 10. His stats for goal scoring are pretty low. It was 0.08 for XG, so he's not really. I think that will get better. But his stats for chance creation is 0.98, 0.98. And I totally agree with that, by the way, Gio Musty. 0.98 XA per 90 is phenomenal for Haksabanovic. Yeah. He's been really good.
For me, anyway, I think he's one of them players that, like, he's a bit arrogant, but not in a bad way. He has confidence in his ability. I mean, he has a thing tattooed on his leg with his name underneath it, so he has a bit about him. Like, I'm quite looking forward to seeing him with them partnerships. And I know as well, Burnaby came in, and Haksabanovic has had to adapt to 2 different left backs in a short period of time. He seems to have done that very well. And just to kind of touch on Burnaby, Tony, before we kind of tail off here, for me, he looked really impressive. Leaving the game aside yesterday, which the podcast will touch upon tomorrow, but he looked really impressive in the game he played against Hibs. He was quick, he was linking up play, he was taking players on, he was getting involved with the assist and getting involved with the creative side of things of the team as well. Do you think now it's his time to kind of take that opportunity and challenge Greg Taylor after a difficult start, by the way, for Burnaby, which we kind of all know about now, but he's kind of come back into things and seems to have trust in him. He seems like a good player, really quick as well and explosive.
Yeah, I think he's got all the abilities. He's just obviously raw and not got that consistency just now. Yeah, yesterday wasn't the greatest, but he had a really good game against Hibs, and he played well against St Johnstone as well. And he's got all the attributes. He's got speed, he's got dribbling ability, he's got great crossing ability, he's got tackling as well. Do you know what I mean? Aggressiveness. So he's got everything. Maybe just that consistency and positional sense, etc. But it's interesting because Starfelt never scored for about a year and a bit for us. Jens comes in when Starfelt's out and scores 2 goals, and then Starfelt comes back and scores 2 goals. Then Burnaby starts playing really well in 2 games. Greg Taylor comes off the bench and scores a goal. So it's like that. There's your perfect evidence of competition makes players better.
Is there anything for his assist at the moment for Celtic? I know he's got a couple. Is it looking impressive from what you can tell?
Burnaby, so against St Johnstone it was 0.45 XA, and against Hibs it was just 0.09. But yeah, there'd be dribbles and different different things in there, carries, progressive carries, etc. So, I think he's got something to offer. Taylor would still be that first choice at the moment, but you never know. A year down the line, once Bernabeu's developed, because I think Taylor's a better player than Bernabeu just now, but I think Bernabeu's got a higher ceiling because of Taylor's lack of pace and maybe physicality would stop him just from progressing that much. He has progressed year on year, Taylor, and he's definitely somebody that learns well. But Bernabeu's probably got that higher ceiling.
I mean, it's Taylor for me, one of them players that I didn't really fancy in terms of quality, but I have to admit, Tony, if I made my words, I think the wee fella's fantastic, and he gives 110%. And I know what you're saying there rightly in terms of his pace and his attributes that might kind of tamper him from going to that highest level, which is fair enough. And it was quite interesting when we first signed Bernabeu from Lanús in Argentina. He was very close to getting into the national team, from what I'm led to believe, in terms of the left back position, maybe getting a couple of caps here and there. And to have that player on the books can only really bode well if you improve him. And as you said, signing here, and just to kind of round off, every player at the Celtic Football Club that we're signing, do you think there is a ceiling for them at this club? And do you think it's like all about the sell-on value?
Yeah, I think it depends, because what I like about the team just now is over the years we had Tierney was the best player, and it was like, when we're going to sell him. We knew as a club we sort of accept you have to sell him, and it was like more about when. Same with Edouard, don't sell him before the 10, but then that was a season too late, etc. You could argue we've got some sort of top players there, like Jota and Juranovic has been touted as moves and Kyogo, etc. But I think the good thing about the team now is we could sell a player for a big value, and actually the team's not going to be as badly affected. We're not relying on one player as we have been previously, and I think that's a good thing. And I think also from Ange's point of view, if they want to go, you go.
100% agree with you. What a way to finish, Tony. If you don't want to be there, don't be there, as Postecoglou would say. But to kind of round it off, touch upon our show sponsors, Beer 52. You can see above me. Get involved in that. Beer 52 /Celts. Get your free case of beer. Cover the postage. Subscription basis every month after that. Cancel anytime. No fee involved. And the Super 6, Tony, which Francis, for the life of me, seems to be still top off in terms of our leaderboard. But hopefully that changes over the end of this weekend and then the Monday when we get it.
What's the expected stats of him, man?
I hope there's none. Not a chance. Sean Ross, he's in here, Watson. He was challenging, but he's tailed off now. We need him back. But we'll get an updated version of that table for Monday's podcast tomorrow. And then we'll be back, Tony, with hopefully Stuart back again in a couple of weeks' time to review some games, buddy. Have you enjoyed this one?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's always good to talk things Celtic.
100%. And in the meantime, till tomorrow evening, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.
Here we are.